Nehemia really broke the mold for me. I had a paradigm in which, I was always under this delusion that the Almighty could only talk to believers, okay? Believers in Yeshua. And the very issue that I brought forth to Nehemia concerning the Matthew 23, I really felt that he was a person that perhaps could help me solve that problem, which I knew was an incredible problem. It was a real burden on me. And what I saw happen, I saw Nehemia Gordon led by the Spirit to make these discoveries and to bring forth understandings that I've been searching for an entire lifetime. And that is what broke the mold for me. It's like, okay, the Almighty is not bound by the box that we put him in. He has called us. He's called us by his name and the things that have happened in his life. And I'm going to ask Nehemia to be with us again on another episode, after this, because his testimony and what happened with his discovery of the name and what transpired, when I heard that, I knew this was from heaven. And so I want you to hear, I want you to listen up and to hear what he has to say on this, ladies and gentlemen, because Nehemia, you promised that you'd take us down the road to Emmaus. And,
Michael, I think the creator of the universe is messing with us. I mean, we have these boxes, and we create boxes for ourselves. We've got the Jewish box and the Messianic box and the Christian box and the Hebrew roots box and the Karaite box and the Muslim box, and everybody's we got to keep people in their boxes, and I think it makes us feel very comfortable when we have that. But when we
can prejudge stuff people away in these different boxes and disregard them.
Absolutely.
I don't have to listen to him. He's not a believer. I don't have to listen to his expertise in Hebrew or anything because he's not a believer.
Right. Or I meet you and you say you're Messianic, and I already know everything about you, but I actually don't know anything about you and your faith until I have a conversation with you. And what we do, I think, when we create boxes for people is we end up putting Yehovah in a box. We end up putting the Creator in the box. And I love what you just shared. I'm humbled by what you just shared, Michael, I have to say. I had an experience like this with my friend Keith Johnson. We went to South Africa. It's the Kai Alicha story. We share it in the Open Door series.
You do? Yeah. You got to tell it, though.
I got to tell it. So we're there, and we end up going to this place called Kai Alicha. It's a township. 400,000 people living in these tin shacks with or tin
cardboard
roofs,
boxes.
I mean, they would tell us in the winter there, it was very cold, and they would use kerosene for their for heat, and it would just go up. A whole area of there would just go up like a tinder box, because these wooden shacks with tin roofs and a difficult place to live. And they said, you can't go in there. They said, you just go there and they kill you. This is what this lady says to us in her South African accent. Keith ends up dragging me there, and we meet this man. He's a Xhosa from the Xhosa tribe. I'm trying to pronounce the name of the tribe.
So
and it's got a click.
Hebrew, Chinese, now Xhosa.
Oh, I know that. I just know that one word, the name of the tribe, Xhosa. And this man, he meets us. We walk in there, and at first I said, Keith, I can't go with you. And I'll be honest with you, I had Montezuma's revenge. So I'm like, look, you go there. I'm going to stay at the place, and then I'll meet you at the airport, because we had a flight to catch out of that place. So Keith ends up dragging me there. I'm not even supposed to be there. I decided at the last minute, okay, I'll go. And so we go and we walk into this church, and the pastor's telling us about his experience. He'd actually been a gang leader in this township, found God, wanted to have a church, didn't have any money. He ended up, some people donated the bricks, another person donated the mortar. Some of the local people got together and put the mortar and the bricks together.
I think I saw that place. I drove by it.
You may have.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's long story short. He tells us his testimony, and then he asks us about us. And I start off saying, well, I live in Jerusalem, Israel. And he says, stop. He says, do you speak Hebrew? And I said, well, yeah, of course I speak Hebrew. I've lived in Israel for 20 years. He says, about 7 years ago I had a dream, and in that dream I saw 4 letters, and I've always believed those to be Hebrew letters. And he said, I've been waiting for someone to ask about this dream. Can you, imagine this. Here's a man who has his dream, and he's just waiting there in Kai Alicha for some Hebrew speaker to walk in. When's that ever going to happen? That should never happen in Kai Alicha. Right. And there I am, and you have to understand, if you say to somebody, an English speaker, I have a 4-letter word It's not a good word. But in Hebrew, we talk about Shem Dalal Otiot, the four-letter name, the four-letter word. It's immediate association. That's the name Yud He Vav He. So I asked him, I said, do you have a pencil and paper? His son brings a pencil. I write Yud He Vav He, show it to the man. And he looks, he says, not exactly. It's a little bit similar, but no, that's not really what I saw. I'm like, all right, I don't know what he saw in his dream. Maybe it wasn't Hebrew. Maybe it was, some other language. Maybe it was Zulu. So Keith runs out to the car, brings back this book he's written, which has Yud He Vav He emblazoned across the front. And the man looks at it, and you have to remember, I have horrible penmanship. I've always, back in 8th grade, my teacher used to yell at me every day because of my penmanship. So Keith's point is, how is he going to read your chicken scratches when you try to write Hebrew? He shows him the Yud He Vav He in the nice, beautiful blocks print, and the man says, that is what I saw. Those are the 4 letters. Now that really challenged me, that experience, because I had created a box for me. I've got the Karaite box, and I'm very comfortable with it. And you're the Messianic, and Keith is the Methodist who keeps Shabbat and doesn't eat pork for some reason. And you've got all these little boxes for people. What I realized though is the box wasn't just for me. Really, the box was for God. I had tried to put God in a box and say, look, I know, God, this is what you do. You talk to Jewish prophets in caves, on hilltops, in the desert. You certainly don't talk to black close-up pastors in a township in South Africa. I know you don't, but he did. And it blew me away, because here you have, this man had the inspiration, but he didn't have the information. There's no way he's going to have the opportunity to learn Hebrew in the township in Khayelitsha. I have the information, but I didn't have the dream he had. And God knew that one day I would walk into there, even though I wasn't supposed to be there, and put the inspiration together with the information, and that would produce revelation. And to me, that was like a pivotal moment in my journey.
That's what you have to do. You can't get away from it. You've been called to do that. You're doing what you're supposed to do, and the Holy Spirit all over the world does what the Holy Spirit is doing.
God's going to do what he wants to do, and I tried to stuff him back in that box, and he wouldn't cooperate. Now I want to tell you about the road to Emmaus, Michael, because that's the context for it. And that was that event in Khayelitsha was like 2010. Now 2 years ago, 2014, I'm in China. I've spent a year there. I had my Xi'an experience where I realized I can't get away from ministry, and so I make the decision I'm coming back to Israel and then to do some ministry in the U.S. And so I contact the people in Hong Kong, and I'd been to Hong Kong to speak on a number of occasions. I had already spoken in Hong Kong with Keith. I went back myself later, and this was the 3rd time I was coming to Hong Kong, and I said to them, I'll come and speak if you want over a weekend before I go back, because I don't plan to ever go back to China. And they said, okay, we'll set up an event. I was really busy. I was packing my stuff and moving, preparing to leave China after a year. It's amazing how much stuff you amass in just 1 year, you could imagine. And I've got all these arrangements. I had some travel after China I wanted to do. I was going to 5 countries in Southeast Asia. So I've got to do all of that in a period of a very few weeks, and the Hong Kong thing. So I didn't check the schedule when I went to Hong Kong. Big mistake. They ended up scheduling me to speak for 10 hours over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I ended up speaking for 12. You know how that is.
Wow. Yeah.
So I speak for 12 hours, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And at the end of my speaking event, these 2 Christians walk up to me from mainland China, a man and a woman. And you have to remember, in Hong Kong, there's freedom of speech to some extent, maybe as much as there is in the U.S. these days. But in mainland China, there's no pretending about freedom of speech. There's certain things you're not allowed to say, and you just keep your mouth shut. And one of those things is religion. You got to be very careful who you talk to religion about. And even if they ask you, you have to be careful what you answer, which is the beauty of me teaching in the high school. I wasn't teaching religion, I was teaching Jewish culture and ancient history, even though it's from the Bible. Anyway, so I meet these 2 Christians from mainland China in Hong Kong, and they walk up to me after 12 hours of teaching, and they say, did we understand correctly that you're Jewish? And I'm like, I just taught for 12 hours. You're not sure if I'm Jewish? And part of it was that I was speaking in English. It was being translated into Cantonese, and then from Cantonese into Mandarin. And they had some English, but it was a little bit lost in translation. I said, yeah, I'm Jewish. They say, this is wonderful. We've got some good news for you. I say, really, what's the good news? What do you think the good news was? The good news was Isaiah 53. Your Messiah has come. And I said, okay. And we sat till 2 in the morning talking about this. And throughout this conversation, they explained to me where they were coming from. Where they were coming from is they were both recovering addicts. And it's a fact in their lives you can't argue with. It's just a fact. They know that they were saved from addiction, from death, by Yesau, who they call Yeshua, Jesus, Yesau, saved them from addiction. That's just something they know happened in their lives. It's not disputable. And they try to share that with people in mainland China. And the people in mainland China are like, so Yesau saved you from drugs, and the God of fortune gave me a red envelope full of money. Like, who cares? And they say, no, you don't understand. He's a fulfillment of the ancient prophecies of the Yotairen, the Jewish people. And the Chinese people say, we're not Yotairen, we're not Jews. What do we care? So they meet me and they think, okay, you're Jewish. All we have to do is tell you the words Isaiah 53 and instantly you'll be a Christian. This is how they thought. And so we're having this conversation and I said to them, look, I've read Isaiah 53 in Hebrew and in Aramaic and in Greek, but what would you like to tell me about Isaiah 53 from the Chinese and the English? And we sit, like I said, till 2 in the morning talking about this. And I could see in the conversation at a certain point, they were very frustrated with me. They were very angry. They couldn't understand how when they read Isaiah 53, it was just so clear what it meant. And here I was reading it in the original Hebrew and didn't see what they saw. They were actually angry at one point. You know, they were yelling at me, and part of this is through a translator. Part of it is in Chinese with my limited Mandarin and their limited English. And they're saying, you see it, you must know he's the Messiah. Why are you denying it? And I was saying, look, I don't see what you see. And here's how I tried to explain it to them, Michael. And I shared with them Luke 24, the road to Emmaus. And
well, that's interesting, because
Yeah.
that is what this year for Passover,
Yeah.
that is what I was compelled to do, is to do the story,
Yeah.
The road to Emmaus,
Oh, yeah.
and I did it as a kind of a one-man play in which
really?
I was not Cleopas, but the unnamed disciple.
Okay.
And I believe that he was unnamed so
Yeah.
that I could play him.
I love that. That's awesome.
So, you know, so this is, this
You look
is
like the unnamed disciple.
I'm a little older than he was, but anyway, I play it because, you know, this story is just very, very precious to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now, you know, this is
Yeah.
something, you know, a lot of people don't know. I mean, Nehemia, you know, he reads, you know, when he studies the Gospels, you know, he reads it through. He reads it in Greek. He reads it in English. He reads it, well, what we have in Hebrew.
I don't
reads
read it in
reads
Chinese,
Hebrew.
I'll be honest with you.
Not in Chinese, but, you know, he's a real student of this, and to understand what Yeshua is teaching. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to listening forward to going down the road with you here.
And, you know, I've actually been to Emmaus, and I'm sure you have as well. So, you know, we have the main highway from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. It's called Kvish Mispar Echad, road number 1. And on road number 1 is the Latrun interchange, and just above the Latrun interchange on the hillside is this village, which up until 1967 was called Emmaus, and earlier Emmaus. And it's an ancient Jewish village. And so they're walking on the main road from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, passing through Emmaus. And the story is that these 2 disciples of Yeshua are walking on the 3rd day. And what I love about this image, and this has to be on purpose, this happening, is they're walking on the road. It's a journey of faith. But they're walking on a literal road as well. And by the way, I want to tell the listeners that this is homework. Go to Luke 24, verses 13 to 31. Actually, read the entire Gospel of Luke, but get this in its context. Read all of Luke 24, because we're just going to touch upon some of it. I know we're running out of time.
And again, part of the context here,
Yeah.
here are 2 disciples
Yeah.
that are so despondent and hurt, they leave Jerusalem during the feast.
Oh,
This is Feast
they're
of Unleavened
upset.
Bread.
They're depressed.
It's all over but the crying.
They're upset and they're depressed. And the story is in Luke 24 that a 3rd man joins them and asks them, why are you guys so upset? Why are you depressed? What happened that made you so sad? And it says in verse 18, it says, then the one whose name was Cleopas answered and said to him, and who's he speaking to? He's speaking to Yeshua, but he doesn't recognize him, according to the Gospel of Luke. He says, are you the only stranger in Jerusalem, and have you not known the things that happened there in these days? In other words, in modern terms, he's like, haven't you checked Facebook? How do you not know what's going on in Jerusalem. And I love how he goes on, he says, he said to them, what things? Yeshua says,
Yeah,
what things?
like he didn't know.
Like I don't know. So they said to him, the things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. And I have to say, Michael, one of the things I really love about this is how authentic this sounds. In other words, if this was being made up in the time of Constantine, it would have been a very different conversation. They would have said, how concerning Jesus, who was the second person of a triune deity who came manifest on earth. Now, maybe they believed that. I'm not saying whether they believed it or not. But that wouldn't be a conversation 3 Jews would be having on the road to Emmaus.
Right,
Not with certainly an outsider who would be like, what are you talking about? So he was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. The people loved him, is what they're describing. And how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and crucified him. And then they said in verse 21, but we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. And this is what I tried to explain to these 2 Christians from mainland China. When they said we were hoping it was he who was going to redeem Israel on the road to Emmaus on the 3rd day from the crucifixion, what they're really saying is our hopes have been shattered. We're disappointed because as far as we know right now at this point, at this stage of the road to Emmaus, he's failed the prophecies. Or more importantly, he's failed what we expected him to do. And this is profound to me because these were disciples of Yeshua who ate with him, who broke bread with him, who sat at his feet, studying with him, walked around with him, and they were hoping he would redeem Israel. What did they expect? So look, it's the same expectation that Jews today expect. Most Jews today are expecting the Messiah who will be a descendant from King David. Messiah means anointed one, who'll be anointed with oil. He'll be the king from the line of David who will sit as a flesh and blood king, and he'll accomplish 3 main things. He'll defeat the enemies of Israel, gather in the exiles, and bring peace to the world. Isaiah 2, they'll beat their swords into plowshares. As far as I can tell, based on the news that's going on these days, Isaiah 2 hasn't been fulfilled yet with the beating the swords into plowshares. I think we're going in the other direction, unfortunately, these days. So when they said we were hoping it was he who was going to redeem Israel, what they're saying is, look, we had these messianic expectations, like all the Jews did back then, and he didn't fulfill those expectations. Now, as I explained to the 2 Chinese Christians, I said, didn't they read Isaiah 53? And my point wasn't to say they were wrong about Isaiah 53. We're referring to a risen Messiah. My point was that you say it's so obvious. It wasn't obvious to the disciples who lived with Yeshua and knew him during his ministry on earth. And not only wasn't it obvious, they're upset because he didn't fulfill what they know he's supposed to fulfill. Now, if that was the end of the story, you should be getting really nervous, but it's not the end of the story. And I know that I've actually shared this in some places, and people will grab the pastor in the back and say, you've got to stop him, he's speaking against Yeshua. I'm actually sharing the message in Luke 24. This is the message of the Gospel of Luke and the road to Emmaus. This isn't something I made up, it's right there. It goes on, they said, indeed, besides all this, today is the 3rd day since these things happened. Yes, and certain women of our company, who they didn't believe, arrived at the tomb early, astonished us. Why did they astonish them? Because the tomb was empty. Hadn't he said to them in Galilee, in the Gospel of Luke, if I remember correctly, he said to them that he would die and rise on the 3rd day? They had heard that. They didn't take that seriously. He didn't mean that. Surely he didn't mean that. Surely that was a symbolic language of meaning he would defeat the enemies of Israel and gather in the exiles and bring peace to the world. That had to be what it meant. And this is the whole point of the story of the road to Emmaus. That after this, at the end of this process, Yeshua explains to them a new understanding they didn't have before. It says he, at that point, as they continued to walk, explained to them all the things concerning himself in the Torah and the prophets and the Psalms, meaning the writings, the Tanakh. And the point is that until he explained those things to them, they didn't know those things. And my point to these Christians from Hong Kong, from mainland China, in Hong Kong, was that you think you understand Isaiah 53 because you're so clever, because God saved you from drugs. But actually, according to the Gospel of Luke, you only understand what that means because it's been revealed to you. And my point is, I want to know the truth, whatever that is. And if God wants to reveal to me his Messiah, I will gladly accept that. And I'll be so happy, I'll be jumping for joy, because I'll have the truth. But he hasn't revealed that to me. And I'm walking on the road to Emmaus. And I want to show this picture and end with this. I was driving on the highway on the road to Emmaus on the way to the airport, and there was a roadblock at 2 in the morning, Michael, and it was the Israeli police looking for somebody. And it got me thinking, here I am driving on the road to Emmaus, and the literal police are there trying to stop people. And out there are spiritual police that are trying to stop people on their spiritual journey as they walk on the road to Emmaus. I'm not going to let the spiritual police stop me, Michael. I'm going to go on that road and take it wherever it leads, wherever the creator of the universe has in store for me, wherever he wants to take me. And those who are angry at me for not believing in Yeshua, don't be angry at me. I want to know the truth, whatever the creator has in store for me, whatever he'll reveal to me. Can I end with a prayer, Michael? Do we have time for a prayer?
Please do.
And this is a prayer from Psalm 119, verse 18. It says, uncover my eyes that I may see the wonderful hidden things of the Torah. What I love about that prayer is this is King David, after he's anointed with oil, we're told the Spirit of Yehovah rested upon him. And even with the Spirit of Yehovah upon him, he could pray the prayer, asking God to uncover his eyes and reveal things. And if David could come with that kind of humility before the creator of the universe, surely I can.